Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conference today. My name is Rejoice Nkala. On behalf of AOV Alliance of Women, I would like to say how delighted we are for you to give us your time today to be with us. It is very, very important for us that you come in and listen to our stories and our voices. My name is Rejoice Nkala, and I'm one of the members of Amplify Our Voices. And today I'll be chairing you, and please be patient with me because it's my first time. So firstly, I would like to introduce you to my humble group and how we came to be. Amplify Our Voices is an alliance of women who have been living in direct provision and some who still live in direct provision, and hoping we will soon join the community and go out of the accommodation, the direct provision. We came together through the support of ActionAid and St. Stephen's Green Trust to communicate our perspective of what needs to be prioritized and not lost as the Irish government is ending direct provision. For the past 4 months, we have done a lot of evening classes on various topics, including the white paper, how to deliver a digital conference, a master class in public speaking, and you can tell me if I passed. We in the AOV Alliance acknowledge and appreciate that a lot of work has taken place and continues to be done in order that Ireland can deliver a better way to help those of us seeking asylum in Ireland. We are here today to speak of the importance of keeping up the work and delivering the promises that are in the white paper to end direct provision. It was not easy to leave our home countries and our families and to start again. And we want to talk a little about what would help us and those who come after us to live with dignity and overcome the trauma we have experienced. Therefore, the themes that we're going to be talking about today is privacy and mental health.
Rejoice, you're getting a little broken there. Go ahead.
Thank you. On that note, I would like to say thank you again for joining our webinar. If it wasn't for you today, we're not going to be here either. So we hope you are comfortable, and although this is not an interactive webinar, we look forward to hearing your thoughts by using the question and answer box on the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to pop in your questions there. So you may be wondering, who are these people and what are they up to? My colleagues and friends will tell you a little bit about themselves and me. Quinlan, can you please play the video for us?
Nkulunkulu uthando lwakho kuthina bantu lukhulu kube wena wawungenami ngabe ngafela endleleni.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Refiloe Molly Molefe, a 36-year-old woman from a beautiful country called Botswana. I have a 5-year-old daughter whom I adore dearly. I love the outdoors, taking a walk, or just traveling and seeing the beauty of nature. I am passionate about fashion, cooking, and crafts. The reason why I joined Amplify Our Voices was to be part of a group that shares the same values and also to improve the lives of people living in direct provision. I feel it's important to have a positive impact in today's world so that you can create an easier path for future generations like my daughter. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to this Amplify Our Voices conference. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Quinlan. I'm 2 years here in Ireland. I'm from Zimbabwe. I like singing, I like cooking, I like shopping. Wherever I am, there is noise because I am a noisemaker. I've got a small thing that I wish the good ones could consider it. For asylum seekers who are staying in direct provision, it's not a big thing, but it's a small thing. Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Rejoice Nkala. I'm a Zimbabwean living in Ireland. I've been living in Ireland for 2 years now. I live in Ireland as an asylum seeker in direct provision. It's really nice to be in Ireland as I found safety, which I've been looking for. I love it. Well, I love painting, I love singing, I love listening to music, I love dancing. All that keeps me going as I miss my family back home. Well, I joined Amplify Our Voices so that I can be able to speak out for myself and all other asylum seekers in Ireland and the future asylum seekers. So we can be able to speak out, ask for a legal change from the government. That's why I'm here today, and welcome to Amplify Our Voices. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video and got a sense of who we are. That is my humble group, and now we want to formally start our conference. That the song that was on the video, it was sang by Zoe. So Zoe again is going to give us a song before we start our first session. Zoe, over to you.
We glorify your name, 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 we glorify your name. Hallelujah, we glorify your name. Siyakudumisa, 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 siyakudumisa. Hallelujah, siyakudumisa. Sikwenza mkhulu Baba, 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 sikwenza mkhulu Baba. Hallelujah, sikwenza mkhulu Baba.
Thank you so much, Zoe. That was really lovely, and you have a sweet voice. Thank you so much. We're so lucky to have you. Thank you again. Now to start our first session. Most, if not all, people are claiming asylum in Ireland have gone through significant trauma before getting into Ireland. Our mental health needs are an important aspect of our survival here in Ireland. Unfortunately, the current direct provision can even make it worse. The system that replaces a direct provision needs to be trauma informed, and next we will hear why. Molly, my colleague and friend, will bravely talk about her experience in direct provision. And Claire Quinlan, an expert in psychology and trauma-informed practice, will help us to understand more about how important a trauma-informed approach is to the future of international protection in Ireland. While both speakers are speaking, please feel free to pop in your questions and your thoughts in the chat box under your screens. We will look at them at the end of this section. So now, and to start our first session, I will hand over to Molly. Molly, over to you.
Thank you, Rejoice. Greetings all. My name is Refiloe Molly Molefe, a 36-year-old woman originally from Botswana. I came to Ireland in 2018 and I am an asylum seeker. This is only one part of me though. I am an adventurous woman who loves to cook. I hope one day I will open my own food outlet here in my new home of Ireland. Today, however, I would like to speak to you about mental health and the importance of trauma-informed system for those seeking asylum here in Ireland. As someone who's been dealing with mental health issue, I feel this topic matters the most to me. I have been a victim of abuse in the past, and as a result, I've been carrying those invisible scars with me all these years. I never received any counseling or any support of some sort, neither in my country or here in Ireland. So when I went to the international protection to seek asylum, I had to tell my story, and it felt as though I was reliving the abuse all over again. I started experiencing nightmares, anxiety attacks, loss of appetite, having suicidal thoughts, and losing interest in everything like taking walks and socializing. People listening to me today will know that I am not unique. So many people who are seeking asylum here in Ireland have suffered so many things and are faced with similar challenges I've had. I think the government and relevant departments like the direct provision centers should have some form of awareness on how to deal with people who may have undergone trauma. As the sad reality is, a large number of those seeking asylum in Ireland will have done so. People do not make a decision to leave their native countries easily. To do so means they have been pushed to that point. The system needs to recognize this. The government should link with therapists, counselors, and other support services so as to assist everyone as soon as they get into the system. I'd like to thank the government for committing to end direct provision, but want to stress that they must ensure that the system they put in place to replace direct provision is trauma-informed. Thank you once again for listening to me, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Molly. That was really, really powerful. And I hope everyone got a sense of what you mean. And thank you again. Please keep your questions coming in the Q&A box. We will look at them at the end with my colleague Triona at the end of the session. Now I will hand over to my colleague and friend, Claire Quinlan. Claire Quinlan, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and join your conference. The direct provision system is one that has never been fit for purpose, and the people who are trapped in it have long deserved access to a system that can help them to recover from being displaced and give them an opportunity to integrate and contribute to Irish society. Sadly, asylum seekers have very often experienced horrific traumas. Not alone does the current system fail to support them to recover from these traumas, but it puts them in a position of complete disempowerment, and this further exacerbates their mental health problems. We need a system that empowers people to connect with their sense of agency and allows them to overcome the horrors of their past. Our understanding of just how resilient we are as human beings is becoming more and more apparent, but in order to connect with our capacity for resilience, we need to have the right supports in place. All our experiences are channeled through our nervous system. Dr. Stephen Porges is the author of the polyvagal theory. His theory has provided us with a new way of understanding how trauma affects the body and how it's processed through the body. He proposed that the nervous system is made up of 3 states which we are brought in and out of in response to what is happening. These are the ventral vagal, the sympathetic, and the dorsal vagal. His research tells us that the body can get stuck in a trauma response mode. When we understand how trauma is held in the body, we can help people to process their trauma through the body. The nervous system is primed to look for and respond to cues of danger. When a person has a traumatic experience, their nervous system is activated in one of 2 ways. The fight-flight response results in the person feeling that they have to flee or fight. This is experienced in the sympathetic nervous system. When the dorsal vagal area of the nervous system is activated, the person can feel completely overwhelmed and in a state of collapse. The person needs help to connect to cues of safety that allow them to connect in with the ventral vagal, which is the center of equilibrium and groundedness. We often need another person to help us to ground or regulate our emotions. The problem with the direct provision system is that it's acting as a trigger for the traumas that people are holding in their bodies. It's not creating a safe space where people feel empowered to move beyond their trauma, but rather it is keeping the people stuck. There have been numerous reports and studies that have highlighted how direct provision is impacting international protection applicants in a very negative way. Durus, an independent non-government organisation, published a report in November 2020 highlighting 5 key areas that are impacting the mental health and well-being of the people in direct provision. The first of these is the unsuitable accommodation. Overcrowding and the practice of unrelated single adults sharing bedrooms have been reported as contributing significantly to anxiety, conflict, fear, and distress. This not only impacts people's sense of well-being, but also acts to exacerbate pre-existing mental health issues. People in direct provision have been found to be 15 times more likely to suffer with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and 5 times more likely to suffer with psychiatric illness. Suicidal ideation and a heightened risk of suicide have also been found amongst populations in the direct provision system. It's imperative that the new system provides all adults with appropriate accommodation that respects each individual's right and need for privacy. Delays in case processing is the second issue, and that is that the direct provision system that was initially proposed was supposed to provide temporary accommodation for a maximum of 6 months. The average current waiting time is 24 months, and there's clear evidence that the longer a person spends in direct provision, the greater the impact on their mental health. Of all aspects of the direct provision system, this is the one that has been found to be causing the greatest negative impact on the mental health and well-being of people in the system. People feel trapped and are stuck in a state of limbo as their futures are uncertain and there's no clear timeline around the processing of their applications. Uncertainty activates the nervous system by creating an anxious response when a person doesn't feel safe. When we look at the window of tolerance model, we see that when we're in a state of hyperarousal, which is when we're anxious, it impacts our capacity to deal with the day-to-day stressors that we can normally manage. This model also shows that when we're drained of energy or in a state of hypoarousal, this also impacts our capacity to deal with day-to-day stressors. In the case of direct provision, the impact of months and months, and in some cases years and years, of forced idleness can lead to complete depletion of energy and low mood. Our window of tolerance can only be widened when we can resource ourselves. This is very difficult to do when we're trapped in a system that takes our autonomy away. People who've suffered forced migration need to be supported to integrate into their new communities as soon as possible. They need to reconnect with a sense of themselves that's outside of the traumas that they have suffered. It's really important that when someone suffers a trauma, they're supported to build a life around what has happened to them so that their sense of identity can become greater than the horrific things that have happened to them. The Day report in 2020 recommends that people should spend no longer than 3 months in reception centres and then be offered independent housing within their community. This is the absolute minimum that asylum seekers should expect when they find themselves forced from their country of origin. Substance abuse and misuse has also been found to be an issue in the direct provision setting. And again, this is down to the forced idleness, where alcohol is used to numb out from life experiences and the conditions of living that are just too overwhelming for people to cope with. The lack of support services is also another major issue. Most centres are privately run and the staff do not have the necessary skills or qualifications to offer support. In terms of mainstream psychological support, people in direct provision experience significant difficulty in accessing information around how to find psychological support. Language and cultural barriers also prevent people from accessing appropriate psychological support. Although there's a legal obligation for vulnerability assessments to be carried out, and this is under the EU Reception Conditions Directive of 2018, this is not systematically conducted in Ireland. There's a huge need for funding to be made available to provide culturally sensitive, accessible psychological support for asylum seekers. COVID-19 has further isolated people in direct provision and exacerbated their sense of a lack of support and uncertainty over the future. Stephen Porges said that trauma is a chronic disruption of connectedness. The current system exacerbates this disruption. The system that replaces direct provision needs to have at its centre an understanding of the traumas that asylum seekers have been through and a network of supports that empowers them to recover from these horrific experiences. Asylum seekers need the opportunity to feel a sense of connectedness with Irish society. They deserve to be integrated and not just left on the periphery. There's massive potential for fantastic enrichment when we integrate different cultures. We all deserve a system that allows us to realise this potential. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Claire. That was a touching, very informative, and we're so lucky to have you supporting us in our conference. Thank you so much. You're such an amazing woman. Now we will have our question and answer. My colleague Triona will help me to look at the questions. Triona, do we have any questions?
Thanks, Rejoice. Yes, we do. We have a couple. And please do keep them coming though, because we have about 10 minutes or so to answer your questions. There's a couple of questions from Molly. One of the questions is, have you managed to access counselling yet, Molly? And then there's another question in terms of how can the system actually be improved to be able to support you better? So maybe I'll let you kick off and then I'll ask the next question.
Okay, the first question, yes, I am attending counseling with Pieta House. So my sessions are every Saturday at 10 a.m. So they've been helpful with what I've been going through.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then in terms of how do you think, if there was somebody else coming into the system now, what would your recommendation be in terms of improving it so that people could access that service a lot faster, maybe, or in a better way?
Yes, because like I said on my speech, that you get to tell your story. So they have an idea of what you've been through. So instead of being like sending you to an accommodation center without any support or any idea of who you're supposed to go to when you need help, because it was really difficult for me to even talk to anyone. So if they get to hear your story and immediately recommend you to the support that you have to go to, I think that would be much better.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because in my case, I had to go to my GP and my GP had to refer me. So it was just a process because I didn't understand what I'm supposed to do.
I get you. Yeah,
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thanks, Molly. There's a question here for Claire as well. Does living in direct provision, does it mean that it takes much longer for people to get over the trauma that they're experiencing, or does it actually worsen their situation and make it just harder in general for them to be able to process the trauma that they have?
Yeah, like I suppose it's that piece around, you know, that your body can be stuck in a trauma response mode, and that when your environmental conditions are reinforcing the trauma, it's much more difficult to process it. That, you know, we need somebody to help us to co-regulate, which means to get our system back into that place of equilibrium and groundedness and, you know, a sense of safety. And I suppose that the issue with the direct provision is that it's reinforcing a lack of safety, that, you know, people are left waiting and they're not given a timeline and they're not given supports. So like, it's really important that the psychological support that they get is consistent, and that it's culturally sensitive, and that it's an empowering experience. So it's not that people can't recover from their trauma. The research really strongly supports the idea that there's great potential to recover, but the environment needs to change. So the system needs to be much more supportive of people's psychological well-being.
That's good to hear, Claire. Thank you for that. I have another question here. I might just open it up to maybe the entire panel. So can people in the wider community, so people who are not living in direct provision, is there anything that they could do to help or to advocate for the changes that are needed? I might direct that at yourself, Molly, but anybody can answer.
Please repeat the question again.
So can people who are living outside of direct provision, is there anything that wider population can do to try and push forward these changes that we're asking for here today at the conference?
Yes, I think if they are aware of what is happening in the direct provision, it will actually help us to get the message to the right people, and for them to have an understanding that when they're dealing with people who are living in direct provision, for example, where you're working, you know, they need to have an understanding, okay, this person has gone through so much in her life. So some of the things that how they talk to you and how they treat you, some of the things may trigger from, you know, the past.
Of course, yeah, of course. And I think there probably are, you know, things that the wider community can do in terms of, I guess, keeping pressure on the government to make sure that this new system that's been proposed under the white paper, to make sure that does actually happen, you know, and it happens quickly. So there's a note here from Diversity Sligo, saying that they have 4 volunteer counsellors supporting asylum seekers, and a very successful program. So they're happy to share their experience with us. So that's good to know that. And there's another question here in terms of if we've gotten any feedback yet from the department about the new system and how it will cater for mental health issues. So I don't know if that's something that people have heard about. We will be hearing from Minister Roderic O'Gorman at the end of this webinar today, so I might just leave that to him to answer. We have a recorded note from him. That seems to be the end of the questions for now. So I might hand back over to Rejoice. And people, you know, you can keep on writing your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll come to them after the next panel session if we can. Thank you so much. Over to you, Rejoice.
Thank you so much, Tiona, and thank you everyone for bringing in your questions. We really appreciate that. It shows that you are with us. Thank you so much, and please keep them coming. And that was great. End of first session. Now we will hear a poem read by my colleague Gift, and you will see a painting painted by me, Rejoice. And yeah, Quinlan, can you please play the video for us?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Onyechi, also known as Gift. I have a poem to deliver, and the title of my poem is Things We Carry on the Sea by Wang Ping. Be blessed as you listen. We carry tears in our eyes. Goodbye, father. Goodbye, mother. We carry soil in small bags. May home never fade in our hearts. We carry names, stories, memories of our villages, fields, boats. We carry scars from proxy wars of greed. We carry dust of our families and neighbors, incinerated in mushroom clouds. We carry carnage of mining, droughts, floods, genocides. We carry our islands sinking under the sea. We carry our hands, feet, bones, hearts, and best minds for a new life. We carry diplomas, medicine, engineer, nurse, education, maths, poetry, even if they mean nothing to the other shore. We carry railroads, plantations, laundromats, boat gas, teco trucks, farms, factories, nursing homes, hospitals, schools, temples built on our ancestors' backs. We carry old homes along the spine, new dreams in our chest. We carry yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We are orphans of the wars forced upon us. We are refugees of the sea rising from industrial waste. As we drift in our rubber boats from shore to shore to shore. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Gift. Gift is one of our colleagues, and she's not here today with us. She didn't make it. We have few who didn't make it, and so we really appreciate the time for you to give us the poem. Thank you so much. So now we will go to our next session. The next topic is privacy and dignity. The white paper to end direct provision makes a clear commitment that asylum seekers will have their own space once this period of direct provision is ended. The Amplify Our Voice participants know that the issue of accommodation in Ireland is complex, but we would really hope the government will maintain this promise of privacy. For us as new arrivals in Ireland, most likely traumatized, sharing a place with people we do not know and with different beliefs and ways of living is one of the most significant challenges we're facing as asylum seekers, not to mention the issue of children's. The importance of privacy and a relationship to human dignity will be discussed by two strong women, Deborah Oniah a woman living in direct provision will speak in her life experience of living in shared accommodation. We will then hear from Salome Mbugua, a very well-known speaker on issues related to migrant in Ireland. Salome is commissioner with the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission and the head of operations of Akidwa, the Migrant Women's Network in Ireland. Let me remind you to keep your questions coming in the Q&A box below. We will look at them at the end of the session. Now I will hand over to Deborah. Over to you, Deborah.
Thank you, Rejoice, and thank you to all our speakers and to all the participants that are here today. So for me, I think, like a lot of questions we get as migrants or asylum seekers is, why do people leave their country to come to Ireland? And for me, I'll just say that you cannot determine where you were born, but you can decide where you want to live. And every human on earth deserves to have a life that is free from pain, from trauma, they just want to feel ease, because we all have one life to live. And if and I think just living is the most difficult decisions that we all had to take, and then coming to Ireland. And that said, we come to Ireland, and the strength that you use to leave your country kind of leave almost immediately once you're put into living in dire provision. And we all suffer different layers of complex losses, losing our family, our country, our loss of ourselves. And for me as a mom, not being able to cook my own food, that's kind of a loss for me, not being able to give my kids the food that they would love to eat. That's a huge loss as a parent. It kind of take a lot of things away from you, and not being able to control your time. And there's a schedule. If you're living in 5-6 years, you have the tendency of you repeatedly eating the same food for that 5, 4, 6, 7 years is 100%. That's what it is. But I'm really delighted that the white paper is here, and how do we make it work? And I think I've lived in 4 different dire provision, and in 4 different dire provision, I've had different experiences living in all of them. One particular for me was, when I was the second place I stayed. And I think the first speaker talked about people not recognizing your trauma. I was pregnant at the time, and I was made to live on top of the 3-story building, and I was living in one room with all of my kids, pregnant. There was no lift. I had to use the stairs to come down for breakfast and for lunch and for dinner and for laundry. So I was spotting, and I, went to the manager, just cry for help. This is what is happening to me. And the next word that came out of his mouth was, if I have to call somebody to check you, they take your kids away. And I'm just here in the country a few weeks. And in my head, I ran away for myself and my kids. And you're telling me you're taking my kids away. It didn't just make sense. But I think it was not recognizing my pain or my trauma. But I now I look back and I tell myself that I fought, but then I wasn't really fighting. I was just begging for help. I was just saying, I can't leave yet. No, I can't. I don't want to die. I didn't leave to die and come here to die, But now I look back and I realize that I fought to get out of that place. And by the time I saw the GP, and the GP say, if you don't have a place downstairs for this woman, then she needs to leave. So I live in another dire provision where there's security that goes security work morning and evening. There's room check every week, so there's actually no privacy. People can come visit you, or is just re-traumatizing. You're just re-traumatized, you know, like, and then we're in this country and we hear about rights of a child, of rights of a woman, and we're so excited to hear about all these rights, but you cannot express it until you have the grace or the opportunity to leave that space. And I think one thing that is really lacking in the system, and if this new white paper really comes to play, is there's a lot of services in Ireland that we didn't have from our country. So if a woman is going through domestic abuse or, you know, or emotional abuse, like a lot of us didn't even know that there was emotional abuse. We only know that abuse is when you have a mark on your face, but there's more deeper scars that nobody sees. So we come here, and then that these services that a lot of us don't really know about, and we don't have that in our country. So there's need for awareness when people come in to say there's this services for your child if your child is suffering for autism, or there's this support group if your child is, you know, having issues, or if you are having issues, if you need counseling, you know, like people, like for me, I think I was able to get counseling the year I came in because my GP actually did pay attention to me. So that really helped me. And another thing is, I'm in a direct provision now where it's self-catering. It's not the same as the 3 previous direct provisions that I've lived in. And I recognize that they're housing crisis, but it's an apartment format, and I have the keys to my own door, and like nobody comes in to do room check, but it's still direct provision. And it's right in the middle of the city. So if the news, like, I'm really hoping, and we are all really hoping and praying. And I think what's great about Ireland is that the government listen. We come from countries where our government don't listen. So they listen and they do something. It might be slow, but they really do something about it. So doing something about it is allowing us to have our own space, to come home and cook for our own children, do our own laundry at the time we want to. And then it gives you privilege because I'm living in my own space. I was able to go to school, like, you know, do my postgraduates in UCC. It gives you time because you're not worrying about all the suffering that is going on around you, to regroup and refocus. And I think I've passed my 5 minutes, so I'm going to stop now. But like, you know, having people, allowing people, and take off the security, like we're not in prison, you know. And yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deborah. That was great to hear from you. Thank you so much. Hope you well. Wishing you all the best. And yeah, over to you, Salome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rejoice. Thank you, everybody. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank ActionAid for putting this meeting together, or this conference together. I think it's very timely to have these discussions. But actually what I admire most of today, like I said, I'm coming from another meeting. And what I've liked even maybe throughout this year is not only to see these women living in direct provision voices being amplified, but also their physical appearance, that we see them and we hear them. Most of the time people speak on their behalf, or most of the time people speak on behalf of migrant women behalf. So I'm very delighted to be here this afternoon. This project that you have just started is very timely. And I really want to thank all of you, because of starting this and standing up, even when the tides are very high. So thank you. So 21 years ago, direct provision was supposed to be a temporary kind of arrangement. It was supposed to be 6 months. And then after 6 months, people would have their own door and they would live happily ever after, with it, like everybody else in society. But still, some people spend up even to 10 years in these accommodation centers. So it has become a long-term mental torture for many people. And as Amnesty International described it, as an ongoing human rights scandal, it's really a scandal, and it's a high time that it's put to an end. I want to say that with the new program board that the department has put together to abolish direct provision, Akido appointed one of the women to represent the organization and to be there, you know, on behalf of all the women living in Action Center. The woman, Rosemary Kunene, has lived in direct provision before, and we felt that I don't want to go and sit in that board and be talking about migrant women in accommodation centers. It's better to have a woman who have gone through this process herself being there. So she's there and she's contributing to the debate on how the, you know, the next step when you abolish direct centers, it would like. Indeed, I was listening to Mo and her presence was very moving. And this is actually something that I mentioned this week. I was invited by the European Union DG Home to talk about migrant women and, you know, women not in employment. But I told them we cannot generalize migrant women and homogeneous. In fact, we have women who have been here for 20 years. I've been here in this country for 27 years. I never lived in any accommodation center. We have women arriving even as of now as we speak. Now, our group among us this afternoon, we have women who have been here for 2 years. So we are not talking, you know, we come all of them together from one country, from one source. We have women who have come at different times and women who have experienced their own challenges and they have been impacted very poorly. And so when Molly was talking about mental health and trauma, this was exactly my point in union. When alive, they should be assessed. That an should be put into place where, you know, determine their mental health issues or, you know, trauma, and then support is put into place. You cannot actually even, I wouldn't even advocate and campaign for women who have mental health issues or trauma issues to get into a job, because she will not even be able to perform properly. Even looking after her children will be problematic. I think it's very, very important that these services and support are put into place to help women from the starting point when they come into the country. And so if Molly was actually assessed from the very beginning and supported properly, then she would be able to manage herself and her child and even, you know, navigate the system in a confident manner. So we really definitely need to work more and to campaign more for maybe the older migrant women who have been here for a long time, even to help newly coming one to navigate the system and to help them. Ireland has also actually, you know, developed a national action plan on women, peace and security. And in that, women, peace and security, they have relief and recovery, which looks into migrant women and how they can support migrant women. Migrant women who have gone through trauma, and also migrant women who need to get into job and actually become part and parcel of the society. But as I see things so much far from having this support being put together for migrant women. As you know, some of you, you know, Akido has been there for the last 20 years, advocating and actually challenging the inequalities that migrant women continue to experience. Women living in direct provision has been one of this category group. And myself, actually in 2012, I undertook research to get to know what is happening with women in direct provision. I interviewed women from 12 accommodation centers, and I wrote the report. I'm only saying it now, experiences of women living in direct provision. Here is some of the quotes, you know, that are based on dignity and privacy that women spoke about. From the very beginning, you know, people felt that, you know, direct provision is like a jail. At least as a prisoner, you don't know when you're getting out. But for asylum seekers, you never actually get to know when you're getting out. You know, you may get out after 2 years, you may get out after 3 years. It's very, very difficult. And so most people looked at it as an open prison where they are kept without knowing where to go. And so this continues to affect their mental health and well-being. And it's something that we have actually challenged and advocated for a long time as an organization to be looked into. In terms of dignity and the well-being of women in the accommodation center, majority of the women have actually spoken about the staff and lack of mannerism or cultural sensitivity. We are all treated with no dignity or like less human, some of the women said. Some of them quoted about privacy, you know, that they don't actually get when they are in accommodation center. And I think Deborah has mentioned this. And one of the women quoted, "The management opened the door. I was taking a shower. There was no privacy. There was nothing I could do. So the management have the right to get into your room anytime you want." And one of these women was actually taking a shower in her room. And so it was very, very difficult for her, to be able to hide anything or to feel anything. And so it's really the reality of many women that when they're living in these accommodation centers, they feel like they don't have any say. And if you say anything, you'll be moved to another accommodation centers. It's also very, very important that we speak out and that we support the women when they speak out, because quite often when they speak out, they are threatened, to be moved or to be taken elsewhere. There are so many things that are going on now. A lot of people have been talking about direct provision and how do we actually advocate for an end to it, and we know the impact of it and all these things. But also sharings of room with people you don't know have actually also been highlighted in our work quite a lot. And in my discussions with women, people sharing rooms with the people whom they don't know their background. Some of the people have mental health, like one woman mentioned, I was sharing with a woman. She kept on screaming at night. And every day she was shouting on the phone and not being able to sleep. So it's really very, very difficult when this happens, sharing rooms, but also in terms of dignity, to success and support, is very, very important. You want to be able to cook food for your children. You want to be able to without having to be watched with all these cameras. Most of it actually commented on us in some direct provision centers, and like you're being watched for hours. And this is actually a violation of human rights. When we look at the human rights standard and what actually Ireland have signed to, Ireland has signed to so many conventions that are all very much broken when we look at the direct provision system. For example, the Declaration of Human Rights, right to privacy, right to dignity. When you're not able to cook your own food, when you're not able to even to go to school, to college, for those who cannot be able to pay if they want to access college and all that. Then civic and political rights, the right to be able to share views, to talk without being intimidated or being told, you should say whatever you are saying, you don't have the power. Then the Convention on Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, which actually the structures of direct provision are very discriminating themselves, and especially to the very vulnerable, who quite often are women, sometimes with no language. And we've also heard from our work how women would be followed by men in cars wanting to sexually exploit them because they know they are vulnerable. We also have the economic and social cultural right, which is actually being violated when people are not allowed to work. We know most of the asylum seekers who comes and they have stayed for a length of time, I think it's 9 months, without a negative response, without a negative response that they are allowed to work. But this should not be the case. The right to work should be expanded to everybody, that everybody should have actually that right to work. And it's one of the basic human rights to be able to work, to be able to have that self-confidence by getting out there and knowing that you're doing something, that make you feel human or human at the same time. So all these international conventions, including the international conventions on children, the right for the child being brought in direct provision, where the parents are not able to cater for them properly, is actually indeed a worrying trend that we continue to see here in Ireland. And so hopefully we will see an end to direct provision. We had very good news from Minister McEntee, I think, on regularization of the undocumented. And I think people, asylum seekers, were touched in this, for example. But it's our hope, and we continue to campaign in Akido, for example, and myself in my position of a human rights commissioner, the right to dignity, the right to privacy, the right to be able to have a driving license, which should not be debated for ages, because it's your right. If that driving is going to help you to go to work, you should actually be supported to have it. And so it's very important that we continue to fight from a right perspective. And then the right to open a bank account, of which most of you have been finding it very difficult. And all these things and issues that we're talking about, issues of power, issues of discrimination, issues that need to be challenged from the highest level, And so it's my belief and hope that the new system, and which should not be the system that we have, it should be our own door system. It should be actually our own house system, where you don't have to be governed by anybody or spied by anybody or be told to do what you should do by anybody, to be cooked by somebody, that you should be able to be free, that you should not feel like you're living in this jail that you're talking about. And so I would be very happy to continue working with most of you moving forward. And I want to thank ActionAid, for inviting me to speak. And we'll continue to work together, all of us, to ensure that we live in a society where each and every one of us, regardless of our immigration status, is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was so powerful and inspirational. Salome, thank you so much. It's good to hear from a strong lady like you, especially because you never lived in shared accommodation, in direct provision. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And Triona, do we have any questions for our speakers?
We do, and we've had several compliments for the singing and for the painting, so I just want to share those as well. But we have a question, I might maybe direct it at Salome, but anyone can pick it up, and it's in relation to the announcement by the Department of Justice this morning that people who are living here seeking asylum for more than 2 years will get leave to remain. So the question was just to get a response or a reaction to that. And then we have a second question, which I might direct towards Deborah, but again, anybody is welcome to take it up. And that was a compliment saying it's great to hear the voices of people from direct provision at the moment, but what have the previous opportunities been? Have we had this chance before to share our opinions around direct provision, and what advice would we have maybe for Minister Roderic O'Gorman or any other minister to make sure that the voices of people living in direct provision are heard? So I might start off with the first question for you, Salome, in terms of the reaction to the news this morning.
I was actually very excited when I received those news, and I have been circulating them, but I haven't studied them very properly, simply because I've been in meetings since morning. I've actually not even taken lunch today. I've actually been from one meeting to another. But if this is the reality, I really welcome this announcement. It's actually made me think of 2004, when the parents of Irish citizens were told they'll be granted the residency and the application process. And I was living in Adrone. I was working in a drone accommodation center. It's the second largest accommodation center in the country. And people called me the Moses in the wilderness, because this was the time to help people to prepare on how to get their papers, their residency. And so I'm hoping that you will find a Moses in the wilderness, but Akindo, we are there if you need us in any way that we can help. If this actually is going to help some of you who are within the time frame that the minister has put, will be very much delighted. I'm happy that this at least something coming up, and that may help people who have been in limbo for a long time. I will study it properly, and I'll maybe respond to you properly next time.
Thanks so much, Salome.
Yeah.
I think we had a little discussion on that in the office here this morning as we were all arriving for the conference. I think everybody's quite excited about it. Deborah, did you want to come in?
Yeah, everybody's excited, and but in the center now, people are kind of getting confused. It's good news, but they're saying, do I need to apply for myself, or do I need to get like a private solicitor to do that? Is it the same legal aid solicitor that I have that's going to assist me to do that? So I think, and there's people that have language barrier also in different centers. So as it's good news is here, but just educating people in it, because there are different culture and different what the news is about and how to navigate applying for it would be great. So I'm going back to Salome and ActionAid. I know everybody that's supporting, think about it. Yeah.
I think we'll have lots of follow-up to be done with government after this. So it's certainly good news, but a lot of questions still to be answered. And then the second question was around the voices of people. Like, have there been other forums where people have been able to raise these concerns before? And or would you have any advice around how this can happen more often?
I suppose, you can only say what you're going through if you are allowed to integrate. So, but it takes courage to even integrate. Like, it takes courage for you to leave your center to go join any group or go for any workshop or go, So, but for me, I think I've had the opportunity to, when somebody say, "Oh, how are you doing? Where did you live?" Like, then you can say, "Oh, like for me, there's some things that I didn't know was wrong. I was just talking." And somebody looks at you and say, "That's wrong. That's not supposed to be happening to you, But you only know that, like somebody that grew up in Ireland, that know about their rights and responsibility and all of that, not just reading, but they can express it, is different from somebody that knows their rights, but never had the chance to express it. So, connecting or joining groups for me has been an opportunity or an avenue. Like, I've worked with Akidwa before, and I've had sections with, I think ActionAid for me was the first group that came to my third direct provision to talk about the After Project, that he talked about women empowerment and your body is your own and FGM. And that was really eye-opening, and people get to share their stories. And I think what was great about this is a lot of us were not really talking to ourselves in the center. But once we come into that space, we realize that we're all going through the same. It's just different label, but it's the same trauma, the same stress, the same isolation, the same struggle. So it gave us chance to hold each other eye and get the knowledge and connect to people. So those are the opportunities to get to talk is when we are able to connect with groups outside of the direct provision, not inside.
That's a really good point. There's kind of a related question to that. I mean, anyone can jump in and answer this now on any of the panels, but it's in relation to, say, asylum seekers that are in need of support, whether it's mental health support or trauma support, and if they are out living in the community, in their homes, maybe they're even a bit more isolated in some ways, and how do we reach out to them? So that's a question for whoever would like to take it on the panel.
I can maybe come in, and just actually
Great.
even going back to what Deborah was saying about, are there other forums? Have there been other forums like this one? I think the difference with this one, there have been many opportunities for people meeting, because we also have so many women. We are talking about, many centers around the country and many people around who are affected by direct provision system. And just to say that the unique thing about the meeting we are in today, we're talking of very sensitive subject, which is actually mental health, for example, and trauma, which sometimes it's normally stigma. People don't want to talk about issues of mental health. Actually, in Akido, we launched a report on mental health of migrant women. It covered actually refugees and women in accommodation centers or living in direct provision. And it talks of stressor, day-to-day lives and how people are stressed. It looks actually into also then the lives in direct provision and all those things. But just to say that, when these issues are discussed and they are brought into open, like the way we are talking about them, it becomes more easy and it becomes more, women becomes more comfortable, about talking these things, because mental health sometimes is very stigmatized. Even talking about dignity and privacy, we've had many people talking about direct provision, but having that specific focus that really is so much, can bring you so much home, because when we talk about privacy, we talk about your own life and how you should be able to access things without being controlled or without being treated differently. So we are actually talking about things in a very, a very intimate manner that we are open to talk about them, but also look for solutions at the same time. And this is actually the strength of this meeting, to amplify the voices using tangible kind of key areas that affect people dearly and in a meaningful way. Coming to your question and the way you are asking, I think, we need to hear more definitely voices of women in accommodation centers, but their mental health and trauma, it's not only when they come into the country, it has to be a consistent kind of support that is actually built in. And that's why I was talking about, like, you know, even maybe having champions of change from migrant community. Before, actually, Akido had, you know, requested the Department of Justice at the time to be able to engage community champions. And these are people who have come different years to be able to be supporting people who need help, whether it's health help, whether it's, you know, any information that they would need. And so to answer your question, I would say this support on mental health is needed. We should not leave it, you know, just to call for meeting and discuss about them, but we should try and do a lot of outreach and networking and reaching out to these women and talking to them wherever they are, even when they settle into the communities as well.
Thanks so much, Salome. I think there's definitely a lot of follow-up to be done between Amplify Our Voices and Aikido after this call. And you raised a lot of important issues as well in terms of, you know, mental health just being a subject that's difficult for everyone to talk about, not just people in direct provision. And it's good to hear people's voices today, and we'll definitely stay in touch around how we can maintain that momentum. Molly, I think you wanted to come in to answer one of the questions around how can we better support people in terms of integration into the community. Do you want to go ahead?
Okay, just to give a little bit about my experience. Living in direct provision is not easy. Stepping out, you feel so much different. You see, like, the society is way different from where you stay. So you feel kind of left out. So for someone to approach you and ask you, hello, how are you? What's your name? You feel like you're part of that person as well. Like you can have a conversation with them, because it happened to me one time while I was in a bus. I was going to a very different location. I didn't even know that place. It was my first time to go there. I was visiting a friend of mine. She gave birth to a baby boy. So the lady started talking to me while we were waiting for the bus. She's just an old lady and she's really nice. I think her name is Anna. She started talking and she was telling me the history of Ireland, and all the stuff that was going in my head just disappeared suddenly. And I started interacting with her. We were talking and she was asking me where I come from. And, you know, having that conversation with her, it really made my day. So for people in the society right now to like meet us halfway, you know, we don't have to feel like we're scared when we are outside walking, taking a walk in the park. And also organizations like Sanctuary Runners, they came to us when we were in Balsaskin, and they told us, this is what we do. We group here, we come into like a few groups of people because of COVID-19. We can't meet in like large numbers. So they just gave us an idea of what they can offer us. And all of a sudden we knew a lot of people, and we were like on WhatsApp groups, and we started meeting different kinds of people, and it really eases our minds and to make us feel welcomed in Ireland. It's a really, really nice thing to have people, you know, communicate with you. And sometimes you need to forget about the stuff that you went through, you know.
Thanks for that, Molly. I think that ties really in ties in really well with what Claire was speaking about in terms of having, you know, support groups and not being isolated, and the need for that for everyone in order to feel secure and safe, and just not just be able to share, but just be able to, you know, lighten the load and have normal kind of interactions with people. I think that's a lovely story you shared, Molly. So thank you so much for that. We'll probably have time for another question or two. I have there's one here, and it asks, you know, it's very difficult sometimes to get the full picture of the difficulties people are carrying when they first arrive, because, you know, there's issues of language, there's issues of mistrust. So the question is in terms of like, how can we better address that, I suppose. You know, if people are not ready or not prepared to open up after they arrive in Ireland. You know, how do we address that challenge? I don't know, maybe anybody really who wants to take up on that question, you're more than welcome. Deborah, go ahead.
I suppose when people come in, like for myself, when I came in, like I was very vulnerable, and like I would listen to anyone, right? And most of the information we get when we come in, if I say, okay, like my first contact would be the Department of Justice and then the GP. So when I met the GP in Baseski, if the GP had told me, you know, they ask you a little bit about your story and he says, there's counseling, there's Akidwa, there's ActionAid, there's Sanctuary Run, and give me option of services that are around, that would be great. But the GP just, they check your blood and check everything and there's no information. And then you go back to the room and then you start hearing different information for people that have been in the Baseski, that are migrants like yourself. And most of the information you get are wrong information. And that increases your anxiety straight away, you know. And then you start Baseski is kind of like the worst place. If anybody's here, they know it's the worst place to start because the information you get from, and the people that are there are just there for like 3-4 weeks, but they just give you information, wrong information, that can just make you go bonkers. Like I was crying every day. My kids would cry with me. You know, it was the lowest of low. So I think coming in and getting, you hear, like they hear your story in the Department of Justice. That's the first point of call. And just give people option of these are the services. Because once you go through that lowest of low, then it becomes really difficult to trust anyone. You know, then because for me, you know, after leaving Baseski and going to one direct provision, going to the other, I needed to feel safe to be able to talk about what was going on with me, because all of a sudden you build a wall and then you say, okay, these people are the same people that I'm running from, you know, until you start feeling safe before you start even healing or before you start saying, okay, I want to go to work or I want to, because it just gets really worse. So the first point of call, the Department of Justice and the GP that we get to connect with. And most of the times you have all these flyers on the wall in Baseski. Nobody reads the flyers because we are all up in our head. Like, so there needs to be a word to the services. People need to connect. Like most of us come from countries where we don't communicate through flyers. So we like I was there for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I never looked at that notice board. Yeah. Never. There was no day I stopped to look at it.
It's a really good point. I think, thank you so much for that, Deborah. You make a lot of really strong points there in terms of having, you know, clear and consistent information for people, but also looking at how people can receive information and how they want to receive information and making sure that they have, you know, choices.
Can I just come in, Triona? I just wanted to highlight something quickly.
We're under a little bit of pressure time-wise. I can give you about a minute, Salome. And I think Claire might have had her hand up as well. So literally just a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about the cultural shock, you know, because when people arrive, some of them, you know, they have the cultural shock, not only of the weather, but of the situation where they find themselves in, mainly, you know, being in Baseski, and you didn't expect to come and meet living in a communal place, you know. So this is all a cultural shock. But it's also, you know, people who have carried with them gender-specific harm on their journey, you know, before getting into Ireland. So they're in their own kind of way of, you know, isolating and still trying to examine on how to engage with the rest of the society. And I think it's upon us organizations which are already on the ground to be able to out and try to give information and also try to encourage people to engage. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Salome. Claire, did you want to very, very briefly just come in?
Yeah, just to jump in, just about that piece about, when people arrive first, that when somebody's in a state of trauma, they're in that kind of fight response or in that collapsed place. So that thinking part of their brain isn't accessible to them. So things like flyers and stuff, just that's not going to, that's not going to be helpful. That I think other people have mentioned the importance of it being spoken in terms of a human connection, and also giving people time to kind of land that, it's not advocated that people start launching into their trauma stuff straight away. That there needs to be consistent psychological support there from the time when they arrive first, and that continues as they transition into the community. That it's just about maybe having information available consistently. So that maybe the GPs would be a really good port of call, because they're kind of an ongoing presence for the person.
Thanks so much for that, Claire. I think it's really interesting how each of the speakers are lining up in your opinions around this and agreeing, so I think there's definitely a lot of learning here from this webinar today. Rejoice, I'm going to hand back over to yourself now. That's the end of the Q&A. Thank you so much to all the panelists, and back over to you, Rejoice.
Thank you so much, Chiona, and thank you so much, everyone, for answering the questions. And I hope if we have people who don't know really what's going on in direct provision, they're getting a sense of what asylum seekers go through and what the step forward. So thank you so much, everyone. Now, to start bringing the conference to an end, we will hear a recorded address by the Minister for Children, Equality, Disability, Integration, and Youth Minister Okomen. Minister Okomen has been a true champion for ending direct provision, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say to us today. And Quinlan, can you please play the video for us?
Thank you for the invitation to speak at your conference today. As many of you are already aware, the government published a white paper to end direct provision and to establish a new international protection support service in February of this year. This document outlines the new system of accommodation and supports that will be offered to international protection applicants and which will replace the current system, commonly known as direct provision, by December 2024. This new model will have human rights at its core and will help applicants to integrate into Irish society from the day their application is registered. There will be a particular focus on children's rights and on ensuring dignity, privacy and respect for all applicants and their families. We developed the white paper in consultation with people living in direct provision, and we are continuing that consultation during its implementation. It is by hearing directly from residents that we can create a system that works for everyone. That is why I'm so pleased to see this campaign focusing, as the title says, on amplifying the voices of people in direct provision. I understand that mental health and privacy were two of the major concerns raised at your conference today, and I will now briefly touch upon both of these points. In developing the white paper, we are acutely conscious that these are two of the most significant criticisms of the current system. The shared accommodation and inability for people to have a front door or a room to call their own, coupled with lengthy periods spent in direct provision awaiting a decision, contributed to feelings of isolation. That is why, as outlined in the white paper, all families will have private own-door accommodation, while all single applicants will have their own private room, upholding their dignity while they are in the process and putting privacy at the core of the new model. Within the white paper, we are keen that the new system prioritises the well-being of applicants. That is why applicants with mental health needs, including trauma, will be referred to healthcare professionals with relevant experience, and this will be done in a culturally sensitive manner with appropriate interpretation services. Once this assessment has been carried out, appropriate community-based care will be initiated and all relevant information will be communicated to mental health services in a timely manner. As applicants commence the move to Phase 2 accommodation, their mental health support and treatment requirements will be factored into the type and location of their accommodation to ensure both continuity of treatment and living arrangements that are appropriate for their needs. Specialist refuge accommodation within the system will be made available for those who need to relocate away from an abusive or violent relationship, and health and social care supports will be made available to women, children and men who are victims of domestic, sexual and gender-based violence. Victims of female genital mutilation and torture will receive appropriate health and social care services. For those who have been subject to FGM, a referral to an NGO-run FGM treatment service will be offered. Bespoke housing arrangements will also be offered to survivors of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, giving them a safe space to recover after their particularly harrowing ordeals. These new measures will help create a more trauma-informed system and will help to ensure that the Irish international protection system treats applicants with the compassion and the understanding that they deserve.
Wow, great to hear the commitment by the Minister. We will follow progress closely and keep the pressure to maintaining the promise as set out in the white paper. So now, before finishing, I want to give a few thank yous to the following people. Thank you to AOV mentors, Mary Rose and Sharon. Thank you to the donor, St. Stephen Screen Trust. Thank you to thank you to ActionAid Ireland, team, Quinlan and Triona. Thank you to my amazing team, friends and colleagues. I have been so lucky to work with you. It was lovely. And finally, thank you, everyone. Please look out our webpage and look out for plans in the new year. You will see there is our website on the screen. And thanks again. Goodbye. Be kind to each other and remember to smile and keep safe. Bye.